welcome back to Wounded on Sixes. Today we're going to be taking a look at a brand new Death Guard list that I created that I'm thinking about bringing to my first Warhammer 40k League event. It's a 6-week event that starts next week where I choose an army. I have the ability to change the detachment and up to 500 points per week in the 6-week long League event tournament. I'm going to go over why I chose this list, the units that are in there, a couple things that we could bring in for substitutions, and why this may be the list I pick for my 40k League event. So let's get started with the list review. Firstly, we're going to start with 2 units of 10 Poxwalkers. Now, the Poxwalkers are not as good as they first were when the Codex dropped because they did put out an FAQ where Poxwalkers will lose the stealth ability that you get with the Flyblown Host detachment. The Flyblown Host detachment rule says any infantry model has a 5-inch scout move and has the stealth ability. So they won't get the stealth ability and they won't get the scout move. Personally, I can totally understand why they don't get the scout move because they do have infiltrate, but it's really kind of disappointing that they lost the stealth. That would have been really helpful for Poxwalkers, which I already think have a hard time surviving out in the game. But what's really great about them is they have the infiltrator ability, which means we're going to be able to ensure that our Terminators are able to use the scout ability, if possible, turn 1, instead of us being hemmed into our deployment zone. So these 2 units are very key. Although they don't benefit from the entire Flyblown Host rule, they are going to be very key for making sure that the rest of our army gets to use the rule properly, because if we're hemmed in our deployment zone, we're not going to be able to get that 5-inch scout move. A big part of this list is being able to get our strong Terminator units into the middle of the field so that we are able to start to wreak havoc with the buffs that we can put on them. So 2 units of Poxwalkers, very, very important. Don't shy away just because they don't get the full Flyblown Host rule. Moving along, we have our Terminator package, which is pretty expansive here in the list. In total, if you count the leaders, you have 22 Terminator bodies in this list. Very, very powerful. 22 4-up invols with T7 bodies all over the field. That's what's going to make this the strongest list that we've created for Death Guard, I think, is because it is going to be so difficult to move these big bricks of Terminators to deal with the fact that we can put so many different buffs on them. So let's get started with 1 unit of 6 that's going to be led by a Lord of Contagion. The Lord of Contagion is absolutely fantastic. He's going to make it so that this 6-man unit can really punch up above its weight class because it's going to give them sustained hits and lance on the charge. So you'll have sustained, lethals, and lance on the charge with 6 Deathshroud Terminators. That's 4 attacks, it's strength 8, -2, 2 damage, -3 if you're bringing the -1 to save contagion. Very, very potent. These guys are really hard to shift. You can definitely start these on the board, although if you wanted to start them in Deep Strike, you certainly could. I personally will always start my 6-man on the board to take advantage of that 5-inch scout, 5-inch move, and then maybe a charge after that. Can make them really super effective. The reason I don't start them in Deep Strike is that a 6-man can be hard to place, especially within 6 inches to get off the most of their rule, because every unit that we drop within 6 of has to be in our contagion range. So personally, I like to start these guys on the board. Now, moving along here to the 3-man led by Typhus, these guys I will sometimes consider putting in Deep Strike just because it's a lot easier to get their smaller unit size down on the board. Typhus is really good for keeping the Deathshroud alive, and the Deathshroud are really good at keeping Typhus alive. They provide Typhus with a 4 Feel Pain. He provides them with -1 to hit and melee, which is really nice. But Typhus is really just a scoring and mortal wound machine. He can use his psychic ability and then still perform an action. Yeah, the unit can't do anything after that, but Typhus can still throw out some damage and then score you some victory points. And, you know, while the 3-man is not as potent against something like vehicles, especially because we're also not getting the lance ability like we do with the LOC, they are pretty formidable against most other infantry units. You know, they're 4 wounds with T7 for Feel No Pain, or 4 Invul, I'm sorry. So there's a lot that you can do with a 3-man unit, and they can really turn a game around. A 6-man is crazy, but a 3-man is really still pretty invincible when you think about it. In terms of other infantry units you're going to see out on the field, we then have a 10-man Blightlord team that is going to be led by an LOV, Lord of Virulence. The Lord of Virulence is going to have the droning chorus enhancement, so that's going to allow us to have assault on these guys right here. So if you can imagine, so in a turn 1 scenario, we go first, we get a 5-inch scout, 5-inch move, and advance, and we're still able to shoot, and we're going to be re-rolling some wound rolls with our Lord of Virulence as well. So these guys are going to be a pretty decent and potent shooting kind of attack, but they also get a lot of attacks in melee. Now that they're 2 damage, they can actually do some real work against other infantry units. They don't get the 4 wounds like the Deathshroud, but they are T7, which is really nice. We're also going to have a Plague Spitter, the autocannon, and a Blight Launcher in there. So we will get some pretty decent and pretty decent firepower and a good variety of firepower as well with them. Again, these guys will not, completely light the world on fire, but we're going to have a lot of tricks to get them into further combat. This is a great unit for doing something like it's basically like a stratagem that makes you like tank shock with your Terminator units. That's really good on these guys. We can also do a 6-inch consolidating pile-in with them, so we can get a lot of movement with these Blightlord Terminators. And with a 10-man unit, it's going to be very, very difficult to shift. So I'm really, really digging the 10-man Blightlord Terminator squad. Moving away from infantry and into some vehicle support, we're going to have 3 Myphitic Blight-haulers. And the reason we're going to go with 3 Myphitic Blight-haulers is, 1, the Blight-hauler has seen a big glow up. +1 to hit, +1 to wound against monsters and vehicles. This thing can actually really slap and count as some real honest-to-God anti-tank. Not only that, but we have an ability in the detachment. It's a stratagem where we can give a Terminator unit that's close to the Myphitic Blight-hauler -1 to wound. So, we can get back with that -1 to wound here for these Deathshroud Terminators or for the Blightlords. That's going to make it very difficult to deal with these guys. They're already T7, so your light weapons are already going to have trouble and they're going to be wounding on 5s. Let's say you get something that's going to be wounding them on 3s or better. We can now make it -1 to wound, and boom. Really, really change the math on our opponents, keeping these Terminators alive. This entire list is built around these Terminators being able to do what they need to do. And these Myphitic Blight-haulers are not only going to provide them some heavy fire support, but they're also going to provide them some protection with that stratagem. So I think it's really important to include all 3 here. There could be an argument that, no, you want to bring the Blight-hauler with heavy Blight Launcher. Sure, that is probably the most effective anti-tank unit that we have right now, but these guys are second, and because we have that ability with that stratagem, I think you definitely want to bring 3. Speaking of the heavy Blight Launcher Bloat-drone, we have one right here. I only own one, so I'm trying to keep it WYSIWYG for this competitive event, but this thing is absolutely insane. It's D6 +2 blast, strength 10, -2, 3 damage. We can get that up to -3 very easily with our contagion range. And these guys really, really do slap. They're only 100 points, only 10 more points than the Blight-haulers. And yeah, the hype is real, guys. They can really take out bigger things. They're great running them solo, but you could pair them up to just, basically make them world enders. They move fast. They're really, really good. And they can also spread some contagion as well. So I really like the heavy Blight Launchers. They're kind of hard to find right now because everybody's running them. And yes, one of the big fears here is that over 6 weeks, we may see some nerfs to Death Guard, and this may be a unit. Luckily, we're going to get that 500 points to kind of play around with. So should we see some points increases, should we see some nerfs to the Death Guard over this 6-week period, we will have some flexibility. But this guy right here is going to make it pretty much round out our heavy tank package. So we'll get the buffs with the Blight-haulers, and we'll get some really effective anti-tank with the drone. Rounding out the list and missing a wing right now due to a small accident in the game a few weeks ago. Just haven't gotten around to fixing it. We have Mortarion. When I first started building lists for 10th edition, I wasn't always including Mortarion in every list, and now I just staple him to it. He is so unbelievably good, and he's really helped to improve my win rates a lot, mostly because he's a beat stick. I mean, he is a little mini army on his own, but he also provides so many different buffs. His once per turn ability to give us a reactive shoot, absolutely fantastic on something like our Blightlords. His ability to give us fight on death, really good for our 6-man Deathshroud squad if they're close enough to do it. Also, gives us the ability to do a reactive move, which we can use on pretty much any one of our units here. These abilities are so incredible, especially for an army like Death Guard that doesn't really move very fast. Being able to give it a reactive move can really change some things. It can get us a Terminator unit into range for a heroic intervention or something like that, or maybe pull one of our units out of harm's way so they're not going to get charged that turn. Mortarion is just awesome for these kinds of things. He's a support unit. He's also a beat stick. He has so many attacks. Like his sweep attack now has sustained hits and lethals. You get like 16 attacks. It is insane. I mean, he can wipe out whole squads on his own and also provide you like just an insane amount of support buff. So if you're not bringing Mortarion in every list, I really encourage you to give him a try and really lean into those support abilities that he has on his data sheet, because they can just be so effective. And, not that you want to create gotchas for your opponent, but it's really nice when you can have these extra abilities that your opponent may not be thinking about, or changes the decision tree for your opponents. I always like to call out what I have as a possibility, just so my opponent can have the opportunity to put that in their decision tree and say, hey, if you move here, you might get a reactive move or a reactive shoot. And oh, by the way, I can give them fight on death. It's really good to give that to your opponent. I think it helps with their decision tree. Will also help determine what I'm going to do next. So yes, Mortarion, absolutely fantastic. He's not just good for attacking, he's also really good for support. And that's really what we want to do here. We want to support our Terminator brick. We're going to put them in the middle of the board, and we're going to say, have it. Have something to remove all these Terminator bodies and all those 4-up invols. So this has been my Flyblown Host list. I'm thinking about bringing it to the League event. Like I said, I feel I could easily move into something like Champions of Contagion here by just making a couple of moves, or I can move into something like Deathlord's Chosen if I wanted to, down the ways in the League event. So, definitely have a lot of flexibility with my Death Guard, which puts them kind of up on the top of my list for what I might bring. But you let me know what you think about this list. Let me know about what changes you would make. And if you haven't already, go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel, because we're going to be having a bunch of content coming out. Not only this week where we're going to be doing list review breakdowns, but I'm also going to be breaking down every one of my League games every week. So go ahead, like and subscribe to the channel. And thanks for coming back for more Wounded on Sixes.